Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, I'd like to say thank you because of this opportunity that we could be on this Zoom call. And I'd like to say thank you to Mr. Jason for joining our meeting. But before we start our online conversation, I would like Mr. Jason to introduce himself here first.
Great, thank you. Yes, my name is Jason McGrath, and I am a teacher. I've been teaching in Indonesia for about 11 years, and I quite enjoy it.
All right, the next part will be followed by introducing ourselves. So my name is Didi Firly Birbalila, and I live in Bandung. I'm also one of the student of State Islamic University of Sunan Gunung Jati, Bandung here. And Gina.
Okay, thank you, Didi. Hello, and my name is Gina Aulia, and I live in Bandung. I'm also one of the student of State Islamic University of Sunan Gunung Jati, Bandung.
All right, so without any further ado, let's just begin our meeting here.
Okay, thank you, Didi. Okay, hello, Mr. Jason. So I have a little bit question for you. So the first one is, so you are a teacher, right? And is there any reason on why you becoming a teacher?
Yes, so actually both of my parents came to Indonesia to work as teachers. And I was getting my degree online, and I needed a job to fill my time and also fill my pockets. And because my parents were teachers, I was exposed to it. So I just tried it, and initially it was kind of difficult, but then I stuck with it and I started to enjoy it after a while.
All right, the second question is, could you tell us about about your journey of being a teacher, maybe like your training or even like experience that drive you to do this job?
Absolutely. So in the beginning, it was very challenging. I had no idea what I was in for. Teaching is a very complicated job. It's not just about transferring knowledge to people, but managing behaviors in the classroom, but also choosing content for the units. And for the first 4 years of my job, I was teaching part-time, basically going out to different schools and teaching conversational class. And it was very fun, but it was also very miserable because I didn't have support from leadership or from coworkers. And I had to make up lesson plans myself every single day. I learned many things the hard way. I learned how to protect children and not be angry with children the hard way. Luckily, nothing seriously bad happened, but it was a very steep learning curve. Later, I moved from part-time to full-time, and I did have that support. I did have kind coworkers and good leadership to really help me and a better curriculum to work with. And that's where I started to really enjoy it. So much so that I decided after 3 years of that, I needed to actually become certified to teach. I went back to the US to get my master's degree in teaching. And then after I finished that, I came back here and continued. It's a process. I'm still learning how to be a better teacher. You're never done. And 5 years later, I'll still be learning and studying and joining workshops to improve my craft.
Yeah, okay. So for the next question is, for being a teacher, there must be a lot of challenges, right? And that you need to face it, right? And could you tell us some of it, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. I find it a bit easier for me now, but again, in the beginning, there was a lot that wasn't told to me. I wasn't informed about how to do this, how to do that. So a teacher is expected to be able to entertain the whole class and encourage every student to be engaged. Now, if the content is too difficult, students will not pay attention, they'll be bored, and that puts us in a very awkward situation where we have to deal with a bored student who sometimes does inappropriate things or is a bit noisy in the back of the class. For classroom management, once you get past that, there's also motivation. Grading papers and giving feedback is one of the more important parts of teaching. However, if you have a lot of students, it takes a lot of time to get actionable, appropriate, timely feedback to each individual student. So it's not just being in front of the class during class time, but it's also what you do during your prep time, and also when you go home. There's a lot to do. And if you don't like that, if you can't handle that, then maybe teaching is not very fun for people until you get the kind of balance going, and then it gets easier.
All right, the next question is, and for all those challenges, how do you overcome with those?
The answer to that would be in what your motivation is for teaching. If you are a teacher for the sake of a paycheck, then many of the challenges are going to be very taxing and difficult to deal with. But if your heart is in the right place, if your motivation is not the money, it's not survival, but it's actually the students learning, then you will learn to be more patient and learn to appreciate the process and become more flexible. A good teacher is a flexible teacher, and we are flexible so that we provide better opportunities, more appropriate opportunities for students to learn. And if they're not learning, it's not their fault. It's also not my fault. We have to work with them to tweak the environment or the learning environment, provide better opportunities for them. So again, it comes down to attitude. If you have the right attitude, you will find a way, you will find a solution rather easily. But if you don't have the right attitude, a solution might be quite challenging to find.
Okay, so what do you like most on being a teacher, by the way?
One of the most rewarding parts of being a teacher is student feedback. Students give feedback informally all the time in their relationships with teachers and their conversations with teachers. I fancy myself one of the favorite teachers at my school, and I can see my students smile, I can see them learn, I can see the positive interactions on a day-to-day basis. They admire me, they respect me, and I respect them. So that positive relationship is very rewarding, very fulfilling. Without that, it can be very like a thankless job, right? No one cares about you, no one appreciates you. But when students really appreciate you, it shows, and it's very heartwarming.
All right. The next is, do you have some more memorable moment of being a teacher?
Yeah, a lot of bad moments from the beginning, but the positive ones, I guess, again, would be student appreciation, but in physical form. Sometimes students will draw pictures of their teachers, and they'll give it to you, and so you can post it on Instagram. Sometimes they'll be extra kind and they'll buy you lunch randomly, or they'll say something really sweet. But another thing that's memorable for me is I actually like to grade papers because I share a kind of a sarcastic sense of humor with my students, and it provides me opportunities to laugh at them in a positive way. So when they write things, when they write essays and they choose the incorrect word, for example, one of my students many years ago wanted to say the word synonym in his essay, but instead he said cinnamon, like a cinnamon roll, right? And it was really funny that it cheered me up. It gave me such a mood boost that it was memorable.
Okay, so for the final or the last question from us is, like, as we know, we are here as student of English education, right? And that we will be a teacher soon in the future, probably. So do you have some advice for us?
Yes, a couple different things. The first thing is take it slow. It is a difficult job with a steep learning curve. You have to be kind to yourself and don't beat yourself up if it's not perfect the first year. Whenever I entered a new job, the first year was the most challenging. Then it gets easier and easier once you build the relationship with students. You should also know your craft. If you are teaching a subject that you're not familiar with, it pays to really study it and know what you're talking about. So you can avoid students questioning you and then avoid that kind of like authority confrontation that students can test you and push buttons and stuff. But lastly, just show goodwill. Like if students think you are there for them, you're there for their benefit, they will respect you and appreciate you. And that usually goes a long way to prevent problems and to encourage a healthy learning environment where both teacher and students can thrive.
Well, okay, that's it for our interview for today. And that's very kind of you for sharing all the experience and all the advice that Mr. Jason gave it to us. And I hope that we can also